like to welcome Joanne Greene to the podcast today. She has been a news anchor and a host on a show, and she also has some podcasts and is a author. So welcome, Joanne.
Thanks, Shelley. It's great to be here.
Thank you. So tell us a little bit about you, what your background of being that news anchor and such.
Yeah, I grew up just outside of Boston, and I had a radio show on my college radio station, and then moved out west to San Francisco and got a job in radio, and that was in the mid 70s. So for the 70s, 80s, and into the early 90s, I was a radio news anchor. I was also a feature reporter and did talk shows on the radio, and did features on a television show for a while, short features that were like consumer oriented. And somewhere in there met my husband and had two sons and had an extremely busy life where I always felt like I had to do it all. I'm sure that's something that some of your listeners, if not all, can relate to. And then years later, I was freelance for a period of time, and then had a job working for a nonprofit where I was producing programs. And one day, as I was heading home, I was walking across the street in broad daylight in a crosswalk, and a car stopped for me. And just as I got in front of her, I heard what sounded like an explosion and felt myself thrown into the air. Turns out a truck had come at full speed, smashed into her. She crashed into me. I flipped up onto the hood of her car, and she was catapulted down the street. I eventually fell off onto the off of the hood of her car onto the street, alive, but very injured.
Yeah.
And the book I've written is called By Accident, A Memoir of Letting Go. And it is basically a journey through my recovery and the few years after that, and all of the things that I learned during that period of time.
Wow. So did you have your two children at that time?
Oh, yeah. By the time
Okay.
this happened, this was 2012. One was already out of college, and the other was in college. No, I think they were actually, I take that back. They were both out of college. They were both out of college already.
So what was your first thoughts, with that experience?
When the accident happened, I was just really coming back to myself after having gone through a period of 4 years where my mother, my sister, and then my brother all passed away.
Oh, wow.
So I thought I had been to hell and back, and I was, kind of back up to full speed working. And so my immediate reaction when I realized that I'd been hit by a car was to just say, not out loud, but inside of my head, really? Like, really? Is this what the universe has in store for me next? Have I not been through enough? And then almost immediately after that, Shelley, I said, all right, let's do this. And some strength from somewhere I was able to access that just said, okay, whatever it's going to take. I'm a survivor. I'm going to get through this. And I never lost consciousness during those first moments. And when I landed on the ground, I remember feeling like, okay, I'm alive. That's really all I knew at that moment. I was in shock. The pain hadn't even started yet, but boy, did it start. Shortly thereafter. So that's how the book begins, is with the accident. And there's lots of flashbacks to other points in my life. And the journey really, for me, was about learning to be still. I couldn't move. I could not get to the bathroom. I couldn't prepare my own food. I couldn't do anything. So, I had to rely on others. Thankfully, I have a wonderful husband who was great, but had never done anything like this before.
Yeah.
And I had to, for instance, not try to micromanage anything. So much for doing it my way.
Right.
If it would get done at all, that would be great, whatever it was. And I had to learn to sit still because that's all I could do. And literally stare at a tree.
Wow.
I mean, it was months.
Yeah.
And
You were
so
mentioning before we were talking that um how you were so busy and you were in, basically with your work, doing things in a million miles an hour, right? You're doing all these things and then this focus of being still. So to me, that would be so difficult.
incredibly difficult. And I think also for a lot of people, myself included, who fill every minute of the day with activity, I think on some level we are trying to avoid feeling or avoid something. I never really thought much about that, but I mean, to go from one extreme to the other, it was really forcing me to learn to be still. And what does that mean? And how does one do it? I now meditate all the time, and I'm a much happier person. I mean, not all the time, like some number of times per week.
Yeah. So you were in the hospital for how many days?
5 days.
5 days, and then you couldn't really do much for at least 3 months, you said, right?
Yeah, at least. And there was a wheelchair, there was a walker. I wasn't allowed to put any weight at all on the right side of my body for 6 weeks. And then even then it was very painful to move around. But bit by bit, eventually I went back to work part-time and then gradually increased to full-time. And then a series of all sorts of things happened because apparently I hadn't fully learned the lesson. I think in life we get the lessons we're supposed to get.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, I remember thinking I wasn't a patient person, but I had one of my sons, my younger son, is a really intense guy and was ADHD growing up. And I thought, okay, this is my lesson. This is how I'm going to learn patience.
Yeah. So with you said that in that moment you decided just to take a positive outlook on it or to learn from your experience. So how did you go about that, gaining that strength? You said you had that strength.
Yeah. So I think some of it was like deep inside me, like maybe even deep in my DNA. The granddaughter of immigrants who left the country where they were to forge a better life, and that took a lot of strength. So I think some of that's just in me. And then I would say that it wasn't always easy. I mean, there were definitely moments where I was having, and especially because there's a certain amount of emotional trauma from being in an accident like that. And I would have flashbacks of the actual accident or feel myself being back out on that street, so vulnerable. But I really began to focus on gratitude. And rather than thinking about what I didn't have, the fact I could focus on the fact that I couldn't prepare my own food, or I could focus on the fact that my husband was doing his best and my friends were bringing over meals.
Mhm.
How lucky am I? How
Right.
lucky am I that I didn't die in the accident, that I have two wonderful sons, one of whom within the first week of my accident told me in secret that he was going to propose to his longtime girlfriend. And it was our secret. And that gave me a counter narrative to really keep me going. So lots of different things. Gratitude was a big one, though. I will say that it's really hard to feel sorry for yourself and count your blessings at the same time.
Yes. Yes, that's true. And just kind of, you can't have faith and fear at the same time. Just can't have those. You need to look at gratitude. Gratitude is so powerful, and just to help you overcome mentally and probably help you emotionally and physically and all those things you were going through.
All of the above.
Yeah.
all of the above. And I sought help. I mean, I had physical therapy for the physical issues. And then I went to a somatic therapist because it's very good for trauma victims. And that was really helpful. I didn't have to go for a very long time, but I think there were 8 or 9 sessions. And that was super helpful.
And what is that kind of therapy?
It's about the integration of mind and body. And the reason I went to it was because I learned that often after something traumatic like what I went through, trauma lodges in the body. And very first appointment, the therapist was asking me to imagine myself just as I was about to step off the curb and put myself in a bubble of safety. And then she said, now look to the right. And I couldn't move my neck to the
Wow.
right. And I didn't have an injury in my neck. So this was purely psychosomatic, but I
Mhm.
couldn't move my neck. And my eyes popped open, and I said to her, I don't know I don't know what's happening. And she said, you're getting proof of the theories that I work with, which is very, very gradually, we're going to open up your neck. So there was some touch therapy to this, but mostly talk therapy. And it's a really interesting modality. There are other modalities that are known to be really good for trauma as well. I happened to try this one. I heard about it, and it was very effective.
Okay. Yeah, that's awesome. So what are some of the things you've learned from this experience? You said patience, right? Or just being still, having
Yeah, I mean, I've learned so much. I would say, where to begin? So one thing is that every moment is just a moment and then it passes. So, whatever you're feeling, be it depression, anxiety, physical pain, grief, um, you can't not feel it. You have to feel it, but know that this will pass and that something else will replace it. Some other feeling, some other experience. You won't always be in the depths. So that was one big one. Um, just taking it more slowly in life generally, not feeling like I have to accomplish as absolutely much as I can every single day. Right now, for instance, I'm doing all the promotion publicity on my book. There is no end to how much I could be doing. I can be pitching stories to journalists all day long. There's just no end. And I am working on it every day, but not all day. And so I'm still seeing friends and I'm still getting exercise every day. I'm also not working full time, which is a first for me.
Oh yeah.
Um, I resigned from my full time job at the beginning of COVID, and it was the first time that I had space and time in my life. Period. I mean, I'd been working since I was 15, and yeah, so that's been rather amazing, but that is not so much what I learned as the fact that I aged out of the working world. So,
Uh-huh.
yeah. So, but of course, I've been working really hard producing podcasts. I have 2 podcasts. One that I do with a woman nearly 30 years younger than me, a fellow writer, and it's called All the F Words. And it's a conversation in which we dig deep on themes that start with the letter F. So it can be things that are light and fluffy, like the one that we were supposed to record this morning, but didn't because her child is sick, was fake it till you make it. So it can be fanaticism, freckles, fake meat, all over the place. And so that's really fun. And then I'm doing another podcast every other week called In This Story with Joanne Greene, and they are micro essays. And that's really the form I think I'm going to stick with once the book is really out and established. I really enjoy writing very short essays, and I think people have very short attention spans these days. So
And they're fun.
thank you. Thank you.
I loved how you added the music too and stuff.
Well,
Yeah.
that's my husband. He's kind
Oh
of
yeah.
he's an incredible producer. And so it's also fun for us to work on something together.
Yeah.
We met working in rock and roll radio in the 70s, and
Okay.
now we collaborate on some podcasts.
That's fun. So how did you collaborate with the other woman to do the podcast that you guys?
You know, funny enough, it was my son's idea. I was talking about doing a podcast and talking about the fact that it would be fun to be in conversation. And he knew her, and she had quite a following because she's written a number of books, and she produced a television show for a while that was based on her life called Young and Hungry. And she has a cookbook out called Hot Mess Kitchen that I highly recommend. She
Okay.
she's writing a novel now, and we discovered that we graduated from the same college. Crazy, because I grew up on the East Coast, she grew up on the West Coast, and while we're very different, we have a whole lot in common. And we thought having a two-generational take on different issues would be fascinating, and that we would be able to get an audience that were people her age and people my age.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was the thinking. And often we're speaking two different languages because of our generational difference, but generally we are in sync.
That sounds fun. So with the experiences you had, especially the accident that happened, how have you felt that self-care plays a role in that and just continuing that self-care for yourself? I mean, it sounds like COVID played a role in helping you to take those moments to yourself, right? How
Yeah,
else?
COVID was helpful.
Yeah.
It was very confusing to me to be inside the house virtually alone, or my husband also works from home, so he was in the other side of the house, but I wasn't recovering from anything and I wasn't sick. I
Mhm.
didn't have any injury or illness or surgery or anything. I was fine, and yet I was at home. And here in Northern California, we had the fire season that first year, and the air was unbreathable outside. So the one thing that we all did during COVID to keep our sanity was go for a walk. Couldn't even do that.
Wow.
I focused on the book. I finished the book, and I got really into learning about memoir. It's very different than anything I'd ever done before. I'd been a writer, but I'd been a journalist. It's a completely different kind of writing. So I took classes, and I joined writing groups, and I, you know, worked with different writing partners to critique one another's work. And it was really like embarking on a whole new career in my mid-60s.
So what is the major difference between the two styles of writing?
Oh my gosh. Well, first of all, when you're a journalist, your opinion is not relevant, right? So you're trying to be as objective as possible,
Mhm.
just the facts. A memoir is the opposite. You want to bring people into the emotion. The whole point of a memoir is to share a particular portion of your life. It's not like an autobiography, which is the story of your life. A memoir is a portion. And the goal, and as I understand it, and this is what I tried to do in my book, is to share my story, but with universal takeaways that
Mm.
any reader is going to go, oh my God, I relate to this, or here's how I can apply that lesson to my life. That's the goal. And so you're sort of toggling between the universal and the particular on the one hand.
Uh-huh.
On the other hand, you need to make people feel like they are in the room with you. So what does that mean? You're describing what it looks like, what it sounds like, what it smells like. You're really trying to make people feel it. And then I did an audiobook. I have an audiobook out as well. And that was really a more of acting the story, because if I'm freaking out, you can't just read it. You have to
Right.
sound like you're freaking out. So right. So this has just been quite a little adventure.
That's fun. I mean,
What?
you're expanding your talents that way. So that's good. So
Yeah.
what are some of the lessons that you hope people get from your book or that you put in there that, yeah.
We can control a lot more of our mental state than we realize. And I'm somebody who's dealt with anxiety and depression on and off throughout my life. And when you're in the throes of any of that, or even when you're just blue and sad,
Mhm.
you kind of feel like you are at the mercy of this thing that's larger than you. And here's the thing, we are always giving ourselves messages. We're always talking to ourselves. Sometimes we give ourselves really negative messages. You're not good enough. Who do you think you are? What did you think wearing that today? All of that kind of stuff. I'm sure you're nodding like this is somewhat familiar.
Yeah.
By the same token, we can give ourselves positive messages. We can really control the message. And I developed a mantra that was, I can do this. I didn't think about developing that. It just popped into my head early on, really early on. I can do this. I can do this. I can do this. I can be this broken and I can come back to wholeness. I can get through this night that's excruciating or terrifying or whatever. I
Mhm.
can do this. So I hope people understand and can begin to practice some of that. A way of empowering themselves. I think also, so often we look at what's wrong rather than what's right
Yeah.
about anything. And so that took a lot of conscious effort. And I think again, we can do that. We can focus on what's good. We can feel the gratitude.
Mhm.
Here's another one. Understanding that people are different. There were some people in my life who showed up in incredible ways, and other people who like were gone,
Mm.
just did not show up. And I learned that illness and injury is really uncomfortable for some people. Doesn't mean they didn't love me, doesn't mean that I don't have a future relationship to have with them, be they a friend or a family member.
Uh-huh.
But different people have different degrees of need for intimacy and prioritize differently. I mean, some people just really have the need to give. Other people just wanted to hear all the gory details of the story. That was exhausting.
Yeah. Relive
um,
it over and over again for us, right? Like,
exactly. Or they want to tell me about accidents they knew about. Like
oh,
that's the last thing I wanted to hear about the
yeah.
time the person they knew was hit by a car. Please spare me. So, so that, and I acknowledged because I had so much time to think, like, what are the things that truly make me happy? Because I have now a whole life post accident, post cancer, post the hurricane. And how do I want to live that life? And what brings meaning to me? And I made a list. I made an actual, I think it's even sitting right here on my desk. I made a list somewhere here. Oh, here it is. And one of the things was I don't need to rush through life. I think I was rushing through life. Um, while I don't want to be known as the woman who had that horrible accident, I don't mind being known as the person whose positive attitude carried her through.
Yeah. That's beautiful.
Another one is I never regret taking time to spread joy. Take that extra minute,
Yeah.
connect with the person, eye contact. I'm a dog fanatic. I absolutely love dogs and I've always loved dogs. I didn't have one growing up. My mom wouldn't live with a dog. So I've always had a dog in my adult life. And when I'm walking with a friend, I have to stop and say hello to every dog that walks by. This can be annoying for my, I might be talking about something really serious and all of a sudden I'm going, hello. But you know, it brings me joy and I do it. Um,
That's good.
Nature brings me joy. I spend a lot of time hiking and it also slows me down. I still, at my age, need to be slowed down. I tend to just like speed up, 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 up. And I don't know when I'm tired. I just crash like a little kid.
Yeah. So you had mentioned a couple of other experiences that you had, the one with the hurricane, and you had mentioned to me earlier about having to be rescued by a Mexican.
This was insane. My husband and I went on vacation. This was going to be our first vacation post my accident. We went to Cabo San Lucas on the west coast of the Baja Peninsula. And hurricanes don't happen there, but one did. And
Okay.
it was Hurricane Odile. And it was a direct hit, Category 4 hurricane, one of the most terrifying experiences I've ever had in my life. And unlike earthquakes, they go on and on and on. And we made it through the night. Lots of flooding in our little condo. And then in the morning, it was just a complete disaster. The whole area, the airport had been gravely damaged, so there were no flights in or out. And we were there for another few days, really like parceling out what food we had, getting some from the hotel, but not a lot. And eventually the Mexican military airlifted tourists out of Cabo and
Wow.
dropped us off in Tijuana, where we took a bus over the border to San Diego. And our son, who lived in LA, came to San Diego to pick us up. It was like 2 a.m.
Oh my
Crazy,
goodness.
crazy.
Yeah.
So that happened. And then when I got back home and back to work, I realized I was being kind of short-tempered at work and thought, that maybe some of my trauma had been reignited by this, which
Mhm.
is in fact what happens.
Oh, okay.
Loss beget, when you're grieving a loss, you're also grieving the other losses that happened a while ago. This is true with trauma. When you go through a trauma, it reignites earlier traumas.
Okay.
So back to see the somatic therapist again, one appointment, and then in between that one appointment and the next appointment, I had a routine colonoscopy. I was turning 60, which you do at that age. And I had no symptoms. I was perfectly fine. And they told me I had colon cancer.
Wow.
So I did have a few, and then it turned out I had surgery and it was stage 1 and I'm fine.
That's good.
So, yeah, each of these were opportunities to practice the lessons that I had learned
Yeah.
and to not feel like a victim. And, there's a lot of lousy in the world and there's also a lot of goodness. And I think, we can choose to focus on whatever we want to focus on any given moment. And I feel like my job is in this world is to, at this point in my life, is to share what I've learned and spread joy and be an activist in certain instances. So
That's good. So what would be some helps or some tips for people to be able to have that mindset of seeing the good instead of seeing the negative in their lives?
well, counting your blessings, I really, during the course of this, I went back to things that my mom had said that I'd always rolled my eyes, count your blessings. Right. Another one, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger.
Mm,
It's true.
yeah.
And what was another one? This too shall pass. Realizing that whatever it is that you're struggling with, now I ask myself, did someone die? If nobody died, then it's not that big of a deal. Whatever it is, my book came back from the printer and the praise page at the beginning, which is where you have the little blurbs of what people say about the book,
Uh-huh.
2 of them were missing and 2 of them were repeated.
Oh no.
Right. And I decided I'm not going to flip out. I was angry. I was annoyed. I wanted to see what could be done.
Hmm.
Everything, everything else in the book was proofread a million times and was fine. But this was, like an add-on afterwards, and
Oh,
somebody screwed up and it wasn't me. And so first of all, I think I said to myself, you didn't screw up. So that was that was one thing. And then also, so what? Like, I'll deal with this.
yeah.
It, it's okay. It's okay. The book is still the book. The book is going to get out there in the world, be it a version that has this mistake in it or the new versions that are being printed right now. And we move on.
Yeah. I was talking just to my children the other day about our attitudes and how we see things, and how if you're angry, you usually have a hard time of thinking logically and be able to find a solution to a situation or whatever. But when you're in that, okay, this is the situation, but let's see what the opportunities are to change it, right? To be able to overcome those obstacles, just like,
But you have to feel the anger first. So you
yeah,
can't tell yourself not to
but
be
just,
angry if you're angry. I think naming it, naming the
yeah.
emotion is helpful.
Mhm.
I'm angry. And so what I would do, like with my kids or now with my grandkids, I've got, it seems like you're really upset, just sort of, and then they go, yeah, I am. And then you can see them start to deflate right at that moment, because it's like you validated that it's okay to feel that frustration. And
Yeah,
then they start
true.
to move beyond it once they feel it. So yeah, I think it's true for adults and kids. Most of the things that are true for kids are true for adults too. We just forget.
Yeah. And I think adults have more problems. Kids don't
Well,
usually,
yeah,
they usually can let things roll off, or that, they don't have as many things going on in their lives, but
they sure don't have the responsibilities, right?
right. Yeah. So, Joanne, this has been so amazing to talk to you today. I appreciate you sharing all that you have. Can you share where people can get your book and connect with
Oh,
you?
absolutely. So the book is called By Accident. Looks like this. A Memoir of Letting Go. It's available everywhere. So Amazon, Barnes and Noble, your local independent bookstore, anywhere. And if you read it and like it, please rate it and review it, especially if you get it on Amazon, because that is a whole thing with algorithms that I don't understand, but it's super helpful. So that's that. The podcasts are also available everywhere, and they're free. So Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, all the Podchaser, all of the different podcast platforms. One is called All the F Words with Joanne Greene and Gabby Moskowitz, and the other one is In This Story with Joanne Greene. And that's the short ones. They're 3 minutes long, and I guarantee if you hear three, one of them at least will make you laugh.
Yes, I agree.